Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Carol Anne Schneider. And she is a real estate professional based out of Canada, Toronto, but she also mixes it in with a little bit of the twist, which we'll hear about a little bit later. The reason why I have her on the show is she's a bread and butter, talking about the real estate industry, interest rates, the economy. I'm always trying to keep my pulse on the market. And Carol, welcome.
Nice to be here. I'm happy to share my real estate knowledge with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know, kind of talk about your original, your background, your story, how you got started, and we'll delve right into it.
So, I was a real estate secretary back in the 1980s, and the market was booming. So, I was sitting behind the desk, typing the offers, making the appointments, and it looked like everybody was making so much money and it was so easy. So I was
Uh,
like, if they can do it, I can do it. So I decided to
yeah.
get my license and I jumped into real estate just as the market crashed, the 1980s
Mhm.
crash. We all know it. And I was
Mhm.
like, wow, this is a lot harder than it looked. And I was pretty young at the time. I was 20. So I did it for a little while, took a year off, went into marketing, real estate marketing, actually. And when the newspaper I worked for was so successful that the competition bought them out, I went back into real estate and I've been doing that for 36 years. It's been my full-time gig.
Yeah. And like I said, real estate is kind of one of those investment asset classes. It's just, the numbers, it's just very, tried and true. It's very steady. Um, I think a lot of the audience, are aware of real estate and its advantages. So we'll kind of skip that, for more of the intermediate advance. And so one of the questions I have for you is, there's a couple questions. The first thing is, the state of the market and just where you see things. Because, like I said, a lot of millennials, Gen Z getting priced out of home ownership is getting so expensive. And plus, it's hard to qualify under traditional methods. Mortgage rates are really high. You've got technology, AI, you've got economic uncertainty, inflation. So where does real estate fit into all of this?
So I still think that there is no better advantage. I mean, they're not making land anymore, right? We know this. And I think a lot of the young people of today, I think that they are seeking out more creative methods of how to get into the market. I know that myself personally, like I have sometimes young people that partner up together, that they're
Yeah,
not, they're not married, they're not, together in that way, but they're making real estate investments and they're still living at mom and pops or somewhere else and waiting until they can move into the market. I
yeah,
think that right now, I mean, in Canada, we just seen a rate cut and we're hoping for another one in September. But I think, if you look at the 2017 market, our rates are around that same range, but of course, prices aren't. And there is a
Mhm.
settling of prices, which I still believe, I think we've kind of leveled off now. Like it is a
Mhm.
buyer's market for sure. It's not a seller's
Mhm.
market anymore.
Mhm.
But I do think that there are creative ways to get in. And mom and dads, like I have tons of mom and dads that want to help their kids to get into the market. So we're looking at equity takeouts and things like that.
Yeah.
I would just say they not be discouraged and they
Mhm.
just keep going at it and
Mhm.
be creative with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of millennials and Gen Z, they've given up. And because basically, kind of the story is like, my grandparents, they were like the government is going to save you, is going to come and save you. And that's where we had like social security. And then my parents were like, yeah, the government can't really be trusted, so it's going to be job security. This is, job high paying jobs. And then 401ks, pensions, and now, my generation, Gen X, millennials, they're like, WTF, this is not, this is a bunch of lies, and like, and then now people are forced to be entrepreneurs. Like there's no job security. people coming out with debt, and they're like, yeah, real estate, we've got hurricane, tornadoes, flooding, insurance. Like there's a lot of different ways. So, talk about this idea of real estate in the context, because everybody says still the best investment, but talk about these macroeconomic headwinds against the industry.
So when I think about my own real estate journey, where we started, I was 20, my husband was 21. We worked two jobs to get our money together. And at that time, interest rates were 13.75%. So, so we're at 4.5, which I know the price tag is completely different. But I feel that, so like in the industry, what I've helped or how I've helped a lot of younger people get in is through pre-construction products. So you're looking at a pre-construction phase. It's got 4 to 5 years for it to be built. So your money is invested at the beginning paperwork stage, and you're waiting for it to vest, and hopefully the market and the equity build is there. So that's a way for some of them to do it. Entrepreneurship is the only thing I've known personally. My husband too. We've eaten craft dinner on the days when we had to. We raised a family. We sent our kid to school overseas. We've managed to make it work. And I think, that's where a lot of people fall short, is they don't believe in themselves enough that it's possible, that they can do it, that they can make it work. And like I said before, like creative ways, like right now, there's a lot of, homes that there's older people in them. Maybe they will do a vendor take back and look at doing an income, generator for them, or cohabitation agreements. Like we've seen a lot of that happening, just be positive, be brave enough to give it a try. Figure out, like make the plan. Sit down with the people you have to and make the plan. I personally think that, there's a lot of people that give up too quickly. They give up before they get the gold.
Yeah. Which kind of it brings me to my next question is this I love your enthusiasm, and for a lot of, I used to be the same way, but kind of my investment philosophy has been a little bit geared towards more risk aversion and just kind of managing risk, as opposed to I used to be very similar to you. The question is, you talk about these creative ways, but the problem is, in this day and age, nobody trusts anybody, and there's scams and, these cohabitation agreements and kind of these, creative ways. It is possible, but, in the grand scheme of things, are people going to do that? I don't know, but, it's kind of really interesting. Which brings me to my next question, because I really like this idea where you talked about interest rates. My parents in the 70s the interest rates were like 18%. So it's like paying for a credit card, So the other question is, because a lot of the rich are using credit and capital and kind of like government stimulus programs to buy up more real estate. And they're actually, for example, like Vancouver, a lot of the downtown is owned by multimillionaires, and they do not rent their homes out. It's kind of created a housing shortage. So, what do people do? Do people turn to stock? And I know people, millennials and Gen Z, they're like, real estate is so old. I'm turning to stocks, or I'm turning to Bitcoin. Kind of talk about that.
Oh, I think any entrepreneur diversifies their portfolio, and maybe they spread a little bit, in a couple of different areas, depending on their risk factors or their risk tolerance. So I know at my firm, it's funny, we have this room and it's got like 9 screens on it, and they are watching the market all day long, and they are trading in the market absolutely every day. But they also have a big real estate portfolio. And I think that at the end of the day, like for Toronto, for example, people say, "Oh my gosh, it's so expensive in Toronto. Like, look at the price of a condo." And I say to them, "Okay, let's go to New York City. What's the price of a condo in Manhattan or London or Milan? Like, as a city, we're actually underpriced compared to a lot of the other world-class cities." So
Yeah.
when you talk about your risk level, I mean, maybe you need to look at a different place to put your money in the real estate market if that's the road you want to go.
Oh,
And trusting somebody, I get it. It's hard to know who's not a scammer and who's going to be careful with your money the way that you want them to be. And I think that really comes from like my own personal business. It's 99.9% past client referral because I
mhm.
know my clients are always eager to put my name forward because they understand, that top shelf service and that care and trust that I've given to them. And I think really you have to find those people in your circles. And if they're not there, then look outside of that
Uh,
and do your
yeah.
own homework. Do your own
Yeah.
homework. Like that's the key, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because, countries, I know the United States is probably going to be the last country to cut. I know. And then, people are wondering, are they going to cut? The, I know that China, Canada, which kind of brings me to my next follow-up question, which is in this day and age, we never know what's going to happen to the rates. And like you said, I like how you put in perspective 4 or 5% versus 13 or 18%. And people are kind of screaming at 5%. What about this idea, like within certain sectors and industries? Because I know in Canada it's a little bit different than the States, but I know that certain sectors, here in the States, commercials are really suffering after COVID. And but what particular industry sectors within the real estate are kind of attractive or kind of getting more attention, growing, etc.?
So we've had a huge population growth, and so multifamily is a big thing here. I mean, my own personal home, it's just my husband and I here now, and we're doing a legalized basement apartment. We don't go downstairs. We're doing it from a resale perspective, that when we're ready to sell, a
Uh,
licensed apartment will bring an income to a buyer. It will make it more affordable for them so they can use some of that income to
uh,
support their payments. Multifamily really is big here, like it's huge. And I think intergenerational living is also as something that we embraced. We did, in addition to our home, we had my father come and live with us when he was on the earth, and so that worked for us. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but I think there's a lot more of that happening now, especially since COVID and those days of lockdown where you couldn't see your family. Like, I think there's a lot more intergenerational living happening, and definitely multifamily is big here. And we're
interesting.
expanding into the United States. We actually
Uh,
just opened up in Orlando, which I'm really
interesting.
excited about. Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's 58 million people visit there every year. We have partnered with one of the top builders in North America. They're building purpose-built Airbnb products. So from a standpoint of an entrepreneur, I can rent it out and I can take my family for a little Disney magic for those couple of weeks that I want. So unlike other investments where you're leasing it long term, you get the benefit obviously of the equity growth and the tenant paying your mortgage off, but these other products I think are more exciting, especially to people that want to have some time away with their family and use their investment.
Yeah. Interesting. And because you mentioned expansion and especially like Orlando, and you mentioned Airbnb. Again, these are things not without risk, so you have to kind of do your due diligence. And I think the main key idea of this podcast is risk and risk management, in the context of real estate. And so, how are you positioning real estate in your portfolio in the context of climate change? Because like I said, you can do everything, but like I said, ultimately Mother Nature, she can be kind, or she can really, you have cities underwater, or you can have hurricanes. How are you thinking about real estate in terms of climate change?
So I feel that again, you have to analyze everything. I mean, I watch the news, and right now we have Jasper in the west coast of Canada is burning to the ground. And it's just so terribly sad.
Yeah.
Everybody's lost their homes and properties. I'm lucky where I live. It's pretty okay. We don't get a lot of hurricanes. We don't have any of that. But
Mhm.
I think again, it's looking at your own personal, when it comes to real estate, it's what are you prepared to lose versus what do you want to gain? And I think you
Yeah.
should make your choice based on what you can live without. Like if you need that money and that's your retirement, 100% of it, then maybe you don't go, buy something in a floodplain area. Like, or I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I think climate change is a thing, like it's a big thing. I see it here, even where we live. It's been like
Mhm.
30 degrees, it feels like every day. It's been a very hot summer. Our winters aren't
Yeah.
as harsh as they used to be.
Yeah.
But again, I think it depends on your own level of what do you want? I mean, that's something that I say to people all the time. What do you want? And a lot of times they don't know. And so
Yeah.
that's where, you help educate them, and there's plan A, there's plan B, there's plan C. Which one feels more comfortable to you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think these days and age, you really have to really assess like risk assessment and diversification. Because like when I first started out, back in at the height of the financial crisis, I was 100% real estate, and then now I see like the dangers of holding 100% real estate. For the first like 8 years after the financial crisis, it was great because you had booming, but then all of a sudden after 2016, you've got, serious things to consider. So don't put all your eggs into one basket. The next question I have for you, because you're a realtor, and recently, there's been uproar, especially real estate commission fees, and here in the States, there's a lawsuit limiting the
Yes.
basically, I think it was 3%. Basically, real estate commissions get cut in, so your income's cut in half, right? So, what are you going to do in terms of like, basically a lot of things are trending towards cutting out the middlemen. And so how should be people thinking about this, positioning themselves?
Well, I think, in Canada, we just, our real estate governing body just released TRESA, which is new rules and regulations, and it talks a lot about the agency relationship, which is what you're
Uh,
talking about now. And, our rule is that if you're going to buy a house with a realtor, then you need to be under an agency agreement with them. And so that realtor
mhm.
is looking after your sole and best interest in that transaction. At this
uh,
time, we're still being paid by the seller. That's still a thing here. I think in the
uh,
United States, it has totally changed after the NAR, the big lawsuit. And,
yeah,
and again, I think it comes down to your level of trust and competence and experience with the client, and how you deal with your buyer client and your seller client. Is there a new way of doing real estate? Are we being phased out? Maybe.
yeah,
Maybe that is a thing. But again, when you're dealing with a solid, true professional, then they're able to give you the market analysis, the market statistics, the risk elements, guide you in the right direction of mortgage financing, all of those things that create wealth for you and the big picture for your life. And so
yeah.
I don't know if we can be replaced by AI quite yet.
Yeah, it's very interesting because no, just basically you see industries as they grow, they become basically stagnant, and they basically levy on like these excessive fees. I mean, you look at like Uber, which first started out, it was like super fast, super cheap, and now once it became this big mainstream thing, they took out the taxi cab industry, and then they basically started charging all these fees. And the same thing with Airbnb, and same thing with realtors and bank, healthcare, banking, all these stuff. My next question is, I'm not, and again, you may not, but if you don't, where are you seeing things like in terms of tokenized real estate on the blockchain? Have you had any discussions, or I'm just curious where the industry is in
We
terms
do
of.
have a very big code of ethics that we all follow, and I follow that. So we do not speak of our competitors. However, I can say that for sure there are companies out there where it's kind of like a do-it-yourself package, but at the same time, when I'm working with a seller client and the seller client says to me, well, why don't we just offer, less to them? I say, well, there's 90,000 real estate people on the board. They all have access to the same information. And as much as they're not supposed to pick, the property that's offering the most commission, that sometimes happens. That's not what I do, but I know other people do. And so I feel that in order to be competitive in a market that's already, a little bit tough right now, you have to show up at your best. And that also means getting that right contract in place with somebody that's going to represent and market the crap out of your house to make sure that you're going to get the top dollar and strategize. Whereas the do it yourself, you're probably going to end up losing money. Your contract may not be solid. Most buyers don't want to deal with somebody on the private side. They want to deal with a professional. So you're
Yeah.
losing, you may be losing out on that right buyer or that zest for, that opportunity for multiple bids because you're not really sure how to handle that. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how well they did, but during the pandemic, like I sometimes was sitting with 100 offers. And that was a lot for me. And I've got like 35 years of experience. But it's like, what the
Yeah.
heck do you do with 100 offers? How do you even know where to start with that?
Yeah.
Right? If you've
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
done it before and it's not your calling, then how are you going to, it's like anything else. You're having a garage sale and you've got the best bike on the block and 100% that you think it's worth 500 bucks and somebody walks along and says, I'll give you 400. Well, your ego is bruised. You're like, no, 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 I want the 500. And the buyer walks. When you're
Yeah.
representing yourself, sometimes that's, you find yourself that you're too emotional about it and you're not looking at the business aspect of it. And what is it going to
Mhm.
cost you to hold on to that bike in that example, right?
Yeah. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I really, like I said, I'm just trying to get a pulse on the industry, what people are thinking. So if people wanted to reach out to you, how would they contact you and find out more about you?
Well, I am located just outside of Toronto. I work for a company called Rexic Realty Investment Group. So
Mhm.
rexic.ca is our website. And I am Carol Anne Schneider on Facebook and all the socials. Live with Carol Anne is my handle on Instagram. And I'm happy to talk real estate to any day, all day. It's in my blood. It's
Yeah.
what I know best.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, and for the audience, let's thank Carol for coming on and really enlightening discussion and kind of giving us perspective. And be sure to give her socials a like and follow. And thanks so much for coming.